All right, man, peace. So the great Kevin Durant has met LeBron James in the last two NBA Finals and dominated him in the last two NBA Finals. And not even just his team has dominated LeBron. Kevin Durant has also dominated LeBron, both on offense and defense. So the question now has to be asked, should we now consider Kevin Durant the new king of the NBA? Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
How about KD winning Finals MVP for the second year in a row? So outside of Game 1 bells, KD had an incredible series, but really put the world on notice. Game 3 dropping 43 points, 15 of 23 shooting, and nailed a ridiculous 33-foot pull-up triple to secure a contentious win. Durant averaging nearly 29 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 blocks per game for the series. Stephen A., how close is KD to LeBron now for best player on the planet after that performance?
Before Stephen A. Smith answers, let me say this. And I vacillated with this. I'm not going to lie. At certain points, I felt like KD was a sliver away from LeBron. And then at certain points in the NBA playoffs, I thought that the gulf was rather discernible. And now I'm back to saying that right now, KD is right on LeBron's heels. One can even make the case that the NBA is a co-regency right now with KD and LeBron James. I think that if KD were able to get the three-peat, especially with LeBron James conceivably being on a new team with a much better roster, quote-unquote, and the Golden State Warriors were still able to meet up with LeBron James' team wherever they would meet up with them at, whether it be in the conference finals, second round, if LeBron is out in the Western Conference, or in the finals if he stays in the Eastern Conference, and the Warriors were to defeat him again, we would have to call KD the best player in the NBA. And I'm sure that there are many who are calling him that right now. What I think, if he were to make it a three-peat over LeBron, you'd have to give him the crown.
Well, he's closing in, and here's what I mean by this. Remember, Game 1, I say he wanted no parts of LeBron James in Game 1. The last 3 games, he certainly did, and
well, Stephen A. Smith, it doesn't really work like that. It's kind of hard for you to imply that KD was intimidated or scared of LeBron in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, but he wasn't scared or intimidated the last 3 games. And he wasn't scared or intimidated in last year's Finals. So that's just you trying to promote a narrative about Kevin Durant because you try to nitpick at him. You try to bully him, let's be for real. But no, Kevin Durant was not intimidated by LeBron James. He's worked out with him in the offseason, or at least he used to many years ago. He knows what LeBron brings to the table. He has a healthy respect for LeBron, but intimidation, no. The entire Warriors defense was very lax in Game 1, and it did help to contribute to LeBron James' outstanding offensive performance as well as his overall greatness. It's not to take anything away from LeBron, but he had a lot of wide open looks and drives to the basket that were no longer available to him from Games 2 until the end of the series.
For Game 3, LeBron James looked like he wanted no part of KD. When you look at it from that perspective...
Well, we know that for a fact. This fool LeBron James switched off of KD in a big moment in the game to allow J.R. Smith to go guard him.
Perspective, that can't be ignored. Now, obviously, you're going to sit there and look at LeBron, the best in the world, because of the multitude of things that he brings to the game. Kevin Durant is an elevated version, the second coming of the Iceman. And what I mean by that is that even it's not just about George Gervin. It's about the level of production that he gives you in key moments.
That's who Kevin Durant's game reminds me of the most, a mixture of George Gervin and Alex English, except a little bit taller and a little bit better.
This brother, during the NBA Finals, this brother Kevin Durant looked like he was shooting against the shooting coach in practice. That's how easy it looked for him. When the team needed something, he gave it to them. It didn't matter who it was against. It didn't matter what the situation was. There were times where Kevin Durant looked absolutely, positively bored because it was that easy for him. And when you talk about superstars, these are the kind of things that you expect them to see. Now, this is the second consecutive year we watched this man show up at the NBA Finals and put on a show.
Absolutely. And please, we cannot accentuate that enough. We cannot stress that enough. This is Kevin Durant's second straight dominant NBA Finals performance. He's really only had one bad game of the last 8 games, or last 9 games, pardon me, that he's played in the NBA Finals. And that was Game 1 of this series. Hell, we can even go back to the 5 games that he played with Oklahoma City, and he was great offensively in the finals. The man averaged 30 a game and shot 50% when he was with OKC in the finals against Miami.
And it wasn't the kind of show where you're moving without the basketball, having picks set for you all over the place, feeding off the greatness of your teammates. No, it was with him on the court, simply posting up his thin backside up against somebody, whether it's in the block or 15 feet or 19 feet away.
Well, Steve, let's be for real. He was still feeding off of the greatness of his teammates, because when you have a Steph Curry and a Klay Thompson out there on the floor, that is going to totally change what your defense is concentrating on. What they allow is for KD to operate with open space and take his man one-on-one. And there's nobody in the history of the NBA who could guard him one-on-one. I would love to have seen Dennis Rodman try, but I've seen Dennis Rodman get lit up by Larry Bird, so I have no doubt that Kevin Durant will be able to give him buckets as well. The difference would be that possibly the worm may have been able to get into Kevin Durant's head a little bit more than he would have been able to get into Larry Bird's head, because it was pretty damn near impossible to get into Bird's head, because he talked so much trash that he felt like he had to back up. At the end of the day, he almost started to lose track of who was guarding him. Bird did. Now, Durant, on the other hand, I think that you could probably get into his head a little bit easier. But even him, at this stage of his career, it's very difficult to sway him mentally. He's been through so much out there on the court.
From the basket, stretching out that 7'6" wingspan, taking the ball, and then looking at whoever the hell was there and saying, do you not understand there are levels to this and you are not on my level? That's what Kevin Durant did throughout these NBA finals, in game 2, 3, and 4, not game 1. That's what he did. And so when you sit up there and you look at it from that perspective, I understand, you can talk about rebounds, you can talk about a lot of different things, even though Kevin Durant has grabbed some rebounds, even though Kevin Durant is defending and all of this stuff. The scoring machine that he is and how he just shoots so much better from the perimeter on a consistent basis than anybody else. I think you look at him and you say he's climbing, and he is in a class by himself. LeBron is the greatest for a different reason, but Kevin Durant is right there.
Totally agree, sir. At this point right now, comparing Kevin Durant and LeBron James is very similar to comparing a Peyton Manning versus a Tom Brady. And I'm not calling Kevin Durant the Tom Brady of the NBA. I'm just saying that you have two players who have their own greatness. They bring disparate psychological components to the game, both for and against. So it's a very good evaluation at this point. Should KD win the championship again next year and be the most prominent player on his team once again, I think that we are going to have to put him certifiably above LeBron James.
There's levels to this, man, and this brother is that special.
I'm not sure if Kawhi Leonard's healthy. Kevin Durant is right now the second best player in the world, but Kawhi Leonard's not healthy.
Yes, I agree with Stephen A. Smith. I cannot put Kawhi Leonard above Kevin Durant as Yes, I agree with Stephen A. Smith. I don't believe that Kawhi Leonard, as great a player as he's shown himself to be over the last couple of seasons, has put together enough great seasons to put him above Kevin Durant as of yet. There's a lot that Kawhi still has to prove. Kevin Durant has been great in the NBA for at least the last 8 to 9 years.
AD is healthy. I don't know that KD is better than AD. I think it's very close.
It's close, but KD is above AD. AD has a lot to prove in the playoffs. He took a major leap this season. Right now, I would have him as a 4.9 level player. I'm still not going to give him 5-star yet. I'll give him 4.9.
In fact, if I'm forced to choose, I'd probably take AD, but it's close. Look, I recognize, Stephen A., let me say very clearly, that if two kids are equally bright, and one goes to Harvard and one goes to community college, at the end of 4 years, you say, who's ahead? Probably the kid who went to Harvard. There are compounding advantages.
Well, one would think, but it would also depend on what their outlook was for their life. Someone may go to a community college and have a sharper image for what they want their future to be than a person who went to Harvard. You have many people who went to Harvard or Cornell or Columbia University who are now living in their parents' basements, but I get your point.
In terms of, like, your environment and how that affects you. So I understand, even though KD has less to do on the Warriors than LeBron has to do on the Cavs, even though KD really couldn't get it done until he got to the Warriors and had another MVP playing with him in Steph and two other all-world NBA players in Clay and Draymond Green, and a great player, still highly effective in Iguodala, and an excellent coach in his system, all of that. I recognize, even though that's the case, okay, those compounding advantages, like playing in that system, helped him become better. I'm taking that away from King.
Well, that's what a great system does. That's what great coaching does. That's what a great player is able to do when he allows himself to be coached. We're all born with different gifts, and it's just a matter of whether or not we have the ability to either bring those gifts out of ourselves, or we're fortunate enough to encounter someone who can see those gifts within us and help us develop those gifts. That's what's called being a great teacher, being a great coach, being a great steward, or what have you. So Kevin Durant is one of those few great players in NBA history who's been fortunate enough to come along at a time when he was able to find the perfect situation for him, and that's very rare. Michael Jordan was able to find it. Magic Johnson was able to find it. Bill Russell was able to find it. Steph Curry was able to find it. Kevin Durant was able to find it. One can make the case that those players, more than any other all-time great players in the history of the NBA, were able to find systems that perfectly fit what they do and was able to bring out different components within themselves that never would have been brought out had they not played in those systems, as great and as gifted and as talented as they were.
KD, but damn, Stephen A., he has a whole lot less to do than LeBron. And no, it is not close between the two. There is a gaping, chasm between LeBron James and everyone else. Once upon a time, Hakeem Olajuwon was about as good as we'd ever seen, and Shaq was coming, and the mailman was delivering, and et cetera, a ton of super great players in the league. Not a single person was sitting around going, you think they're as good as MJ? Because there was...
Let me say this very quickly. When Michael Jordan came back into the NBA in the 94-95 regular season, Hakeem Olajuwon was the best player in the NBA. And when the Bulls lost in the playoffs to the Orlando Magic, and they started the next season, Hakeem Olajuwon was viewed as being the best player in the NBA at the start of that season. Now, of course, due to Jordan once again being able to reattain his conditioning level and his overall basketball feel, he was able to reclaim that title somewhere around the early portion of the season, especially due to the fact that the Bulls got off to that great start. But at the start of the 95-96 season, Hakeem Olajuwon was viewed as being the best player in the NBA. He had also just won 2 straight championships, and Jordan was still trying to reprove himself. And it's very interesting because at that moment, Jordan had 3 titles, just like LeBron does, and Hakeem had just won 2 straight, much like Kevin Durant. At the start of the 95-96 season, I'll say it again, Hakeem was viewed as the best player in the NBA, not Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was viewed as being second, but he knew that he had to prove himself. And somewhere along the early portion of the regular season, he was able to regain that title and, of course, seal it when they won the championship at the end. But no, Max Kellerman is not correct when he states what he's stating, that people thought that there was this huge gap between Jordan and Hakeem. That's not true, at least not after the 95 season, no.
Because there was an enormous gap between between MJ and, let's say, Shaq. And the reason we think of LeBron, and we're even comparing him to MJ now, is really because that's the case again.
LeBron James is not the Michael Jordan of his generation. Sorry, but no.
As many great players as there are in the league, there's an enormous gap between LeBron and the rest of them. KD fits in maybe number 1 among the rest of them, but maybe not.
Sometimes I have to wonder, what planet do these LeBron James superfans live on, where a player can be 3-6 in the finals, but there's this unbelievable chasm between himself and the next best player?
Maybe not. LeBron is in, there are levels to this, and LeBron is in a completely different level. Think of it this way. Take the eyeball test, obviously LeBron. How about just the kind of subjective stuff like...
Now, did you see what Max Kellerman just did there? He said, take the eyeball test, obviously LeBron. Well, normally when you say we're going to evaluate via the eyeball test, then you would list different things like physicality, speed, leaping ability, jump shot, handle, A lot of those things are closer than you might think. Do you think that LeBron James is faster up and down the court than Kevin Durant is? I don't think so. Does he have a greater vertical leap than Kevin Durant? Possibly, but it's disputable. Who has a better jump shot? Not even close. Who's a better free throw shooter? Not even close. Who's a better defender? Not even close. All three for Durant.
Like, switch their teams. You think if LeBron was on Golden State instead of KD, they're ever down 3-2 to the Houston Rockets? It would never happen. I know I'm just
Well, we don't know that. And you're putting forth a lot of hypothetical arguments, a lot of baseless arguments.
Just asserting that. How can I prove it? It didn't happen. But think about it yourself. You think if KD was on the Cavs, they'd get to the finals given this team?
It's possible. It depends on how long he had to play with them and how much he allowed the coach to actually coach him. So that maybe he would not make it just the KD system. If they were actually running an offense, who knows what he could do with a Kevin Love, with a George Hill, with the other players on the team like a Rodney Hood who's shown that they can score in the NBA. Contrary to what is put forth and postulated by a lot of the LeBron James sycophants in the sports media, no, all those players are not bums.
It had never happened. Take another way, like look at the analytics, right? If you want to, that's the eyeball test. That's subjective stuff. That's the basketball stuff. Take the analytics. You know who had the most win shares, defensive and offensive, put together? He played all 82 games this year. LeBron.
Isn't that funny? LeBron James had the most offensive and defensive win shares. So what is that stat really telling you? That's really telling you that the systems that they're running, both offensively and defensively, all revolve around him because he was one of the worst defensive players in the NBA this season. So why would you even claim that? In regards to offensive win shares, we know that he handles the ball the most along with Westbrook and James Harden. So of course he's going to lead in offensive win shares. Now, what LeBron has as a feather in his cap is that he's very, very proficient. He's not just a shot jacker. He's not somebody who's going to average 35 points a game and only shoot about 45% and take all the jump shots. He's someone who's going to give you 28, 9, and 9, but he's also going to shoot 55% from the field, so he's very proficient. That's one thing that I will say. I will give a slight edge to him in regards to the comparison with Durant, but Kevin Durant is a low 50% shooter himself, and he's taking a different type of shot. But I will say once again, in regards to LeBron, LeBron has greatly improved both his mid-range and long-range jump shooting.
Second and third were Harden and AD. They were close. KD wasn't there. Like, if you want to look at the advantage...
Why would KD be there when he's actually playing in a real system, in a real offense, where he does not dominate the basketball? It makes no sense, sir.
The advanced analytics, it's LeBron. Take the postseason. Throughout this entire playoff, Stephen A., LeBron, Kevin Pelton just did this on ESPN.com the other day. 18th greatest overall playoffs of all time. MJ number 1, of course, LeBron 2 on the all-time list, different seasons. But this year, LeBron was 18, KD 39. Like, however you want to slice it, you want to do the eyeball test, you want to do subjective stuff where you're just saying, come on, think about it. You want to look at the...
Come on, think about it. That's normal liberal jargon. How come you don't think like how I want you to think? There's something wrong with your brain functionality. Quote unquote, think about it. Get the hell out of here, man. Why would Kevin Durant ever be in the top 10 of all-time greatest postseasons when he did not dominate the basketball? Players that dominate the basketball are going to be the players that always fall into that top 5, top 10. You have to, number one, dominate the basketball, and you have to be extremely proficient on both ends of the court in order for you to have what would be considered one of the top 5 or top 10 playoff runs in NBA history.
The analytics. LeBron is ahead of KD. Now, Stephen A., KD couldn't get it done when he had Westbrook and Ibaka and Steven Adams and like useful players on the team like Dion Waiters, etc. And they...
Yes, he could not get it done playing in that playground style led by Russell Westbrook. They were basically playing the Russell Westbrook system. And Westbrook was allowing KD to have a prominent role in that offense. That's why he got so frustrated. Because KD was looking for order and he couldn't find it. He couldn't find it there.
And they went to a Game 7 on the road at Golden State. He came up small, let's be honest, and they lost. LeBron, in the same circumstances with less around him, got over the hump. However...
Yes, due to Kyrie Irving and his greatness in Game 7. That's why LeBron got over the hump. Because Kyrie Irving provided him with assistance. Russell Westbrook provided Kevin Durant with little to no assistance. Russell Westbrook is a great talent, but he's not a great player.
However you want to slice it, LeBron is in a class by himself, and if you want to argue KD is leading the pack, the rest of the pack, I'm not going to argue too strenuously against that. I think it's close. But KD is not on LeBron's level.
Well, it's amazing how you just act like somebody said that KD's above LeBron, because nobody said that. So that, once again, that's you creating the narrative. No wonder.
Thank you, sir. And that will oftentimes happen with stupor fans or fanboys who feel like their idol or their god is being assaulted in some way. That's why you notice that very rarely was Max Kellerman able to provide anything of substance. He was talking about offensive and defensive win shares, quote unquote. That was pretty much the best that he had to offer. And as we all know, LeBron James is one of the worst defenders in the National Basketball Association. But once again, I will give him credit for being extremely proficient on the offensive end. But you cannot compare two players when one plays in a system that is predicated on making sure that they accentuate everything that he does, and then another player playing in a system that's about motion. You just can't compare. It's like saying, well, Dominique Wilkins is better than James Worthy because look at the stats, look at the numbers. It's a little bit more to it than that.
No wonder you and LeBron get along so well. Here's the reality of the situation. When I watch the game of basketball, I'm thinking two things have to take place. You have to defend and you have to score. And when we look at scorers, is there anyone we can definitively say is better than Kevin Durant as a scorer?
No.
And that's my point. So what I'm trying to say to you is, nobody's better than LeBron because of the multitude of things that LeBron brings to the equation at this particular moment. I'm not looking at the 15 years. He's got 4 more years in the league than KD, and the bottom line is LeBron's body of work speaks for itself. It's undeniable.
Absolutely. That's why I still have LeBron as number one, because of what he's been able to accomplish, not just from a team perspective, but from an individual perspective. He deserves that level of respect for his accomplishments. But KD is on his ass. And if KD's able to win a 3rd straight championship, especially while beating LeBron again, I'm going to put him above LeBron.
So if you want to look at career-wise, which I did not know we were talking about, you brought that up.
Right now.
Of course, exactly. But you brought up the 15 years. That's all I'm saying. So what I'm saying is you lost me for a second when you brought up. Well, you brought it up. I'm just simply saying you brought it up. I didn't say you brought it up 5 times. I said you brought it up. That's all I said.
I don't remember hearing Max Kellerman mention 15 years, Stephen A. Smith.
I said you brought it up. I didn't say you brought it up 5 times. I said you brought it up. And I'm saying I'm not thinking about that. I'm only thinking about what we're seeing as we're watching it now, in terms of where they are now. And I think as a scorer, if you tell me, and this is the category, to put it best, that I will put KD in. Same question I'm asked about with Kobe. Same question I'm asked about with MJ and others or whatever. I said I'd take LeBron almost over anybody in the world throughout life.
Last word here,
Stephen. You talk about the first 46 minutes. But you talk about...
I wouldn't. I would take Michael Jordan over him in the first 46 minutes, the first 47 minutes, the first 48 minutes, in the overtime. I'd take a peak Larry Bird over LeBron James without any PEDs in his system for all 48 minutes, no doubt about it. And look, I have a lot of love for LeBron James in regards to what he brings to the table, but there's no doubt in my mind that there's something pumping through that man's bloodstream. Allegedly there is. Allegedly. But Larry Bird, from about 83 to 88, wow.
Talk about the last 2 minutes. You're talking about that. I'm taking KD all day, every day, because he's a better shot maker. That matters to me.
All right, Max, you can respond after the break. We got to leave it here, guys. It's best player versus best team, but after Game 3, I mean, that was something special.
Well, it's obvious that Molly Karam is ready to put KD above LeBron James. I'm not quite yet. I think that he still has a little bit more to do, but I think that he's on his way. So peace.